Welcome to Hire Power, the show where we cut through the noise and get real about hiring. I'm Kim Frost, founder of Frost Connections, and after 25 plus years in the search industry, I've seen what works and what absolutely doesn't. If you're a founder, CEO, VP, or HR leader who's tired of bad hires and ready to build a team that actually fits your culture and vision, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Hire Power. I'm Kim Frost. Today, we're diving into one of the most underestimated but powerful tools in leadership, storytelling. And I know you're not too surprised because it seems like it's all the rage. How do we tell our stories? And I will tell you, this is going to be a little bit longer because I have a special, fabulous guest, so it's well worth it. The power of great storytelling and leadership. Why is that? Because great leaders don't just direct, they inspire. And inspiration requires buy-in. Storytelling is how you take your team beyond tasks and into purpose. Let me give you a quick example. I belong to a business networking group. Recently, we had a table discussion talking about what each of us does. One of the members said about me, "Oh, I know what Kim does. I know what she does. She hires people." And another member jumped in and said, "Oh no, Kim does so much more than that." And here's what he said. I'm going to read it word for word. Honestly, it's not a self-plug, but I really want you to hear this. I swear I could have cried right there. And he said it literally off the top of his head. So here goes. Kim is a curator of relationships. She is the master of putting the right person into the right job in just the right way. Her firm is Frost Connections, and her business is to help companies find and place the right professional for key critical hires into these high-performing companies. But Kim doesn't do just simple recruiting. Her gift is that she intrinsically understands people, and she understands how human dynamics relate to business success. She has an almost magical ability to recognize the candidate who will thrive in that particular role and drive transformation. To do this, she makes a huge investment in the lives of the people she works with, taking the time to learn their strengths, their talents, and their passions. And not just candidates, but the hiring manager, team members, executives, and everyone involved in the hiring process. More than anything, Kim cares about the long-term health and happiness of the people she works with. It's why a huge percentage of her clients remain in close contact with her years later. They know that in Kim, they have an ally, a friend, and a trusted advisor who will always deliver the honest truth. Honestly, that was what he said. Now, I hired my next guest to help me tell my story a couple years ago. So he did have a foundation. We did spend some time together understanding my business and what makes me and my business different. But after he said that, literally my mouth dropped. There's no way I could have ever said that. It came with zero rehearsal. And after he said that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a genius. It was a reminder to me. Your story is not always what you think it is, but it's what people feel when they experience you. And when others can tell your story clearly, like Mario, it spreads trust, credibility, and faster connection than any job description or LinkedIn headline ever could. Leaders, this is critical for you. If you want your team to rally behind a vision, don't just tell them what to do, tell them why it matters. Share where you've been. Share what you've learned. Paint a picture of what success looks like and why it's worth pursuing. People don't buy into a plan. They buy into a story they believe in. And if you think this is just about being charismatic, it's not. Great storytelling is a skill. It's thoughtful, it's intentional, it can be learned and refined. Which brings me to my guest. The man who described me so well that day, he made storytelling his life work. After almost 30 years as a communications leader at Microsoft, he saw firsthand how powerful stories are for leaders, for brands, and for movements. So he founded StoryCo, where he now helps leaders and organizations craft the kind of stories that move people into action. Spoiler alert, Mario is one of the people that helped the new CEO at the time of Microsoft, Satya, with his story, I'm air quoting, when he stepped into that first role. My guest today is Mario Juarez, founder of StoryCo. Mario, welcome to Higher Power. I'm so glad you're here. So
Nice to
let's
be here.
dive in. You spent nearly 30 years at Microsoft working in their communications. When did you first realize storytelling wasn't just a nice to have, but a critical leadership skill?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Kim. The answer to the question is maybe a week after I walked in the door. So I have to set the stage. I walked into Microsoft. The very first day was in 1988. And this was when Microsoft was just a company that no one had ever heard of.
Right.
Walking in the door, it was clear that this place had an unbelievable energy, just amazing people, and they were a bunch of engineers. And they actually were not big on communication. They kind of let their they let their killer products and their vast market dominance tell all the stories that they needed to. And I originally walked in the door as a technical writer, but I had a journalism background. And my first real contribution to the company was setting up the company newspaper, this
Mm,
internal newsletter called the Micro News, which came out every Friday. And that was really where I think I made my first contribution. And it was one of the steps the company took to thinking more seriously about storytelling.
I love that. What made you take the leap from the corporate world to starting StoryCo? Was there a moment that pushed you to say, okay, wait, leaders need this, or I can reach a greater audience? What was that point for you?
Yeah, there was a moment in a very specific moment in 2017
Mm,
where the light bulb went on. Now, background from this, from my early micronews days, I decided I wanted to go into product. I was very interested in how companies build products and market products. So I spent a lot of time in the trenches doing marketing communications, public relations, and executive communications. And out of all that, I sort of gained a set of competencies
mm,
about how to do this that really crystallized when I took a job in 2015 in a different group where I didn't know anybody. And as I went and started talking to leaders, I kept hearing people say, we need to we just don't know how to tell our story. And
mm.
I said, well, I know how to help you with that. And I created just very organically this framework, which I later called storytelling for impact. And I started just sharing this with people. And it became this hit. And one day an executive walked up to me after I mean, it's got ridiculous. It was super popular, and people were like, "Oh, come and show this for my team." And people were flying me around the world. And one day, this one executive walked up to me and said, "You need to leave Microsoft and just focus on this, and we'll hire you." And that's what I did, and they
Ugh,
did.
I love that. That's amazing.
Thanks.
So, leaders sometimes think that storytelling is just fluff or marketing spin.
Yes, they
How do
do.
you help leaders see it as a strategic leadership role?
Well, I would say first, every good leader I have ever met understands it inherently. There are people that are potentially good leaders that need to be guided on that. And the best way is to just point out to them what they see, that the people that are actually changing the world, the great leaders, generally are great storytellers.
Hmm.
You think of like Steve Jobs as kind of the canonical tech executive who really understood how to tell a story, showing them how to do that. And they kind of all secretly want to. Everybody wants to be a good storyteller, right? People like, but most people like I'm not any good at this, and so they shy away from it. Unlocking that, it sort of just opens the floodgates, and then they're interested in doing it. Um, Often with the need for an enormous amount of help and guidance.
Well, I talked about it earlier in the podcast, but it is so hard for people to tell their own stories, and words
Yeah.
are so impactful. So it is, I'm so thrilled that this is such, being recognized, storytelling is a key leadership tool.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So on the flip side, what's one mistake you see leaders make when they try to tell a story and it falls flat?
When they try to talk like somebody else, when they try to when they say, I'm going to talk like Steve Jobs,
Mhm.
and they put on the sweater and the dark lights and or whatever. It's really, and I say that with a lot of compassion because people often don't understand that they have everything within them to be great storytellers. It just requires work and it requires courage and it
Mhm.
requires love. I mean, you actually have to love that audience. You have to love
Mhm.
that thing that you're talking about. And you kind of have to love your own place in the mix. That's kind of the staging for your ability to create that authentic story that make people stop and say, I need to keep listening.
Mhm. Well, it reminds me of two things when I'm talking about building a, employee brand and what your culture is. And one of my
Mhm.
clients, their 6 words, one of them was love.
Yeah,
And I loved your presentation at Seattle Execs where you focused on, right, the love of the importance of love in what you do and not just in the business world, right, but the personal world.
yeah,
And I also talk about humor in an episode where when you try to be funny, that's where it falls flat. So again,
yeah,
you've got to kind of you've got to get to know what your style is. So
yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. That is so true. Many of our listeners run small and mid-sized companies. If they want to use storytelling to inspire their teams, but they don't want to sound salesy or fake, where do they start? Because some leaders really feel uncomfortable sharing personal experiences. So, what's a safe first step for being authentic without oversharing?
Well, I'll just say right out of the gate that sharing personal experiences is only one brand of storytelling.
Okay.
um, there's so many other great stories. The answer to the question of the though of where they should start if they're trying to use storytelling to inspire their teams is to start with their teams. Like you need to go immerse yourself in your understanding of your
Mm,
team.
I
What
love
is it
that.
that they're dealing with? What's on their mind? What are their fears? What are their aspirations about why they're in this job? What do they like want from you? And we make all these assumptions, but you
Hmm.
actually have to go do the research. I mean, you
Right.
should go sit down and engage in long conversations where you have no agenda. Like you're not there to talk next, you're there to listen. And
Hmm.
that will give you all the information that you need to answer their question, to answer the question that you asked of like, how do you do it? The safe first step is to understand your audience.
Hmm.
And then you talk about authenticity without oversharing. That simply means that you just gain some measure of humility so that you are, again, in the service of that audience. I mean, I often say that storytelling is actually a service delivery exercise, that
Hmm.
storytelling is about bringing value to your audience in a way that they love getting it. Storytelling is a wonderful package, but your goal is to encapsulate something that has meaning to the audience, that's going to matter to them, that is maybe concurrent with what you care about, but doesn't necessarily need to be. People are looking for connection. People are
Hmm.
looking for the ability to feel seen and understood.
Hmm.
So that's what you do as a storyteller. And when you do that, then you're in a position to say, okay, well, what is it that I'm trying to do? What influence am I looking to exert? And what experiences do I have on my bookshelf,
Mm-hmm.
that I can bring into this, which may be my personal experiences, or it may just be experiences that matter to me, or it may be just the resharing of an experience that they gained while they were getting immersed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no golden framework for it, but the key factor is immersion in your audience. And that's what most people don't realize in terms of how to become a good storyteller, is that you have to understand that audience first.
And you have to take the time, right? And you can't sub it out. You can't have a manager do it. And I do think that that is often
That's
overlooked
right.
because if you try to dive in and implement something without any buy-in or perspective, it's going to fall flat. So
Yeah,
I love the fact that that's a very similar approach to storytelling. And then, let's not be shy about it. People can always call you and hire you to help them, right?
sure. Yeah. The thing that I would say though is, like, don't expect me to just like come back to you and say, here's your story. The
Love
number
that.
one mistake that people make is that and this leaders is what I'm talking about, but it's anybody that's
Hmm.
trying to use a story and a presentation to make something happen, is that it's incredibly time consuming. And people,
Hmm.
we're not taught this. This isn't in the mix of business. You don't really talk about it much in business school, but the great leaders that I've worked with spend ungodly numbers of hours
Hmm.
to get to that place where they can walk on a stage in front of 10,000 people, or sit in a room in front of 10 angry employees, and be able to make it look easy, make it
Hmm.
look like it's off the cuff. Well, I'll tell you, it's very hard to make it look very easy. And it
Right.
requires time, and it requires a structured approach. And anything that involves a high stakes presentation involves, by my experience, about 4 times more time spent simply just practicing than people
Yes.
ever imagine.
Yep. When I asked you when you did your presentation at Seattle Execs, I said, "Do you practice?" And you're like, "Absolutely." But that's also what I love about you, Mario, is you're just, you're very genuine and you're very honest. And I think that that goes
Oh,
a
well,
long
thanks.
way.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
So you've worked with a lot of executives. You've talked about that. Is there a story or a moment you've seen truly transform a company's culture or direction through storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll probably be in the history books, in the business history books eventually. About 12 years ago, yeah, 12, 15 years ago, Microsoft was a company in decline. It was a company that was increasingly irrelevant. It had missed all these huge technology waves. It had missed music. It had missed the internet, search, all these powerful cloud technologies. And finally, the board, fired the CEO, and they promoted a new CEO from within. It was a guy named Satya Nadella. And he was a very different breed of cat than these hard charging,
Mm-hmm.
hyper adolescent, hyper aggressive, angry white males that had dominated the company, bless their hearts. But Satya was this guy from India, and he was a very thoughtful guy, and he was this guy with spectacles and a bald head and a very soft demeanor. And I had the good fortune of being one of his communications managers
Ugh.
right before he got that promotion.
Mm.
And I watched him transform the company with a story. The very first thing that he did was send out a memo to the whole company that was
Mm.
just basically a set of stories. And they were stories about things like the boys in the boat rowing team from the
Mm-hmm.
University of Washington. They were quotations of poetry that were evocative and story driven. And it was a vision that the company could be something entirely different. And there was a path to it. And it was all about story. And it was like a lightning bolt that struck the company. in many ways badly for people who had power because it was sort of the first shot across the bow that everything was going to change. And you can look at what's happened since Satya Nadella took over the company. Hard to argue if you're a shareholder that it hasn't been an enormously powerful thing. They're in the dogfight now about how do they position themselves in this new world of AI. They don't have a particularly great position, but he constantly uses story. And when you watch him, he uses story. And I'll just add an addendum here. When we worked with him and he would give a great presentation, he would come to us 8 weeks in advance and say, okay, fill up my calendar and tell me what I need to do. And I'm going to get the best scores of any speaker at this event, or you guys are in trouble. And he would take enormous, he would spend, and I'm not kidding, he would spend 20 hours just practicing,
Wow.
the thing that we had crafted together with him over and over and over and over and over again. And he always got those top scores. Very unlikely because he wasn't a natural. He was,
Right. Yeah.
now he's not a natural storyteller. So that I think was the time when I like watched an entire battleship
Unbelievable.
just pivot and suddenly go a new direction. And it was done with story as one of the tools in his arsenal.
Unbelievable. What an opportunity for you on so many levels that you can point back to say, I helped, I was part
Mhm.
of that, and that
I
you
was just
got that.
lucky. It was such a great
Okay,
experience.
it's not luck. I know you, Mario. Don't even be so humble about that.
Very kind.
Well, one last question, and you did
Mhm.
mention it, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring up AI.
Yeah.
So, in this AI driven world where content is everywhere, what makes human storytelling even more essential?
Hmm. It's a great question. The problem that we have is that AI is a good storyteller. Generative AI, ChatGPT, it's a good storyteller. It's not a great storyteller, and it's in no way really an engaging storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
The way that human storytelling differentiates is in this magical space of connections that we all carry every day. I mean, if you look at the neural structure of these vast data centers, they're still just minute compared to the neural structure of a human brain.
Mm,
So as humans, we're able to make connections and patterns that we don't understand. Most creative geniuses don't understand why it's happening. They just understand that they've opened the door and they immerse themselves, and then magic comes through them like light through a prism. Human storytelling is instantly recognizable. Of course, I say all this, who knows where we'll be tomorrow?
right.
But it's about the reality of human storytelling. It's about the imperfection. It's about the
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. It's
Yep.
about vulnerability and all of these little filters that we have inside of our brains about what is safe to share, what's not
Right.
safe to share, what do I just instinctively know that this audience wants to hear about. A lot of this is dynamic. When you're giving a presentation in person, you might walk in with a great story, and in that moment, you're reading the faces, you're getting this subterranean sense of body language or all these nonverbals,
Mm,
and it will change
mm.
how you proceed.
Right.
AI simply just can never do that.
Right.
AI can't pick up on these things. I'd say use AI up to a certain level in your life. Have it be a researcher, have it be create that lousy first draft,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to take it that final mile, and
Right.
that would be everything. Focus on the final mile. Let
Love that.
AI take care of everything else.
I love that. Thank you. Well, I'd love to close out my shows with one piece of advice.
Mhm.
So, if you could give our listening leaders a piece of advice about telling their story tomorrow, just one thing they can do right away, what would that be?
Very simple. Tell the story in 6 words.
Oh, I love that.
And what I mean by that is do the exercise literally. Think
Okay.
about everything that you want to say
Writing this down.
and put it into 6 words. I have this great exercise that we use in our workshops, and it never fails to be just astonishing. I ask everyone, and your listeners should do this right now, write the story of your college experience in
Hmm.
6 words,
Wow.
right? Do you have one right off the top of your head? Tell me the story. And it doesn't even matter if you went to college or not.
Right.
Write the story of your college experience in 6 words. And everyone can do this because for those who went through college, we had this transformative experience. And when you only have 6 words, you're required to pare it down to the most essential things, often in a way that's maybe even a little bit cryptic, but it's irresistibly interesting because it's cryptic. How about you? What's your 6 word story?
Oh my God, I can't say that right now. And I'd be afraid. I would want some of my listeners to know, and my friends from
Yes.
college would be like, Kim, be careful about what you
Yeah,
say,
well,
please.
it's a fun one to do. It's a great party exercise, and it's a great answer to your question. If
Mm,
you need to tell a story to make something happen in the world, spend 2 or 3 minutes just thinking about everything that you want to say, and then force yourself to get it out in 6 words. There's your
yeah.
headline. There's your
Yes.
provocative lead. There's your teaser. And there is the hard work that you must do to understand what is essential in what you're trying to get across, both in terms of content, data, hard information, and emotion, and those soft factors of
Hmm.
meaning that bring people in.
I love that. And I'm going to think about it. One word that comes up definitely is naive. For sure, I was naive. I busted out of my parents' house, with a 11 o'clock curfew and went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know, was voted the number one party school
Party school.
consistently. You know it. So that would be my one word. Well, thank you so much, Mario, for joining me today. I know our
It's my
listeners are going to
pleasure.
walk away thinking differently about the power of story and how to use it to lead better. So I'm going to,
You are so welcome. My pleasure.
Mario, thank you so much for joining me today. I know our listeners are going to walk away thinking differently about the power of story and how to use it to lead better. And yes, Mario practiced this. Also, P.S. I did think of my 6 words in no particular order: naive, wild, growth, remorse, redo, eye opening. That's it for this episode of Higher Power. If you're ready to hire smarter, connect with me at frostconnections.com or at LinkedIn at Kim Frost. And if you've got something to say about today's episode, follow the show and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, hire smart, lead better, and remember, how you hire is who you become. See you next week. No fluff, just better hires.